Welcome back to another episode of the Sell Like a Leader podcast, the podcast for revenue leaders who are on a mission to cultivate a high-performing sales team within their organization. I'm your host, David Kreiger, founder of Sales Road's America's most trusted sales outsourcing and lead generation provider. And today I am really excited to have a great revenue leader, Justin Shriber. Justin is currently the CEO and co-founder of Terret, and he's a veteran software executive with 3 decades of experience leading organizations through major technology transformation. And, you know, this is definitely, if not probably the most seminal time for technology transformation, and his company is on the frontier of that, which we'll dive in, which of course is the AI boom. And just to give you a sense, he has driven over 50% year over year growth at companies like Oracle, LinkedIn, and a number of high impact startups. So Justin, great to have you on the show here.
Dave, it's awesome to be here.
So, as I mentioned, you have led a number of organizations, sales teams through multiple technology waves. And right now, you guys are working very closely with companies adopting AI in sales. And so I'd love to get a sense from your perspective, why are certain organizations figuring out AI, and why are some others struggling? And what do you see as the critical things that indicate whether a company is able to seize this transformation in the right way versus those that aren't?
Well, I think there are a couple of key things that determine success versus failure. The companies that we're watching that truly nail it, number one, are able to get the scope right. Out of the gate, they're choosing very small projects, establishing wins, and then building on that success. Secondly, the projects that they're choosing are actually really important too. I see companies that have wild ambitions and swing for the fence day one. Those are usually the projects that fail. The initial projects, one might label as even tactical in nature. Hey, let's clean up that data. Let's figure out the administrative aspects of a job and try to automate those. It's not that that's a limitation that the AI has. It's that there are incredible learnings locked away in those projects. And when you nail those, you then build an understanding that sets you up for success longer term. The third thing is companies that are successful with AI are really good at the ROI. They're able to boil down a project to measurable improvements that are made in the business. And again, that becomes a calling card that they can drop on the desk of the CEO and say, hey, had success here, we're ready to go even bigger. And they get instant credibility because of that.
And so with the scope, right? And because I think a lot of times we see this transformational technology when we want to revamp everything. And so what are, I think it's great advice to figure out something that's small in scope. I mean, do you have some examples for sales leaders as to what are good things to start with and build some mini wins there?
Yeah, I actually break down projects into one of 3 tranches. The first tranche is really about getting the foundational elements of your business locked up and in line. The second tranche is about changing behaviors of reps to make them more effective. And then the third is to literally transform the economics of the business. Can't step to stage 3 until you've passed through stages 1 and 2. So in that first tranche, which is really get the foundation in place, data is the number one thing. Yeah. I guarantee you, and David, you know this, if you were to look at any CRM system, what are you going to find? You're going to find duplicate information, incomplete information, broken hierarchies. AI is incredible at going in and simply cleaning up the data. That gets you a pristine source. But the reason the data was corrupted in the first place is because humans were allowed to touch it. CRM was always populated by people. It was an inevitable aspect of the product. My advice when I talk to executives today is let your people touch as few data points as possible, because when they do, let's be honest, salespeople aren't wired to be data engineers. And so the second facet of cleaning up the foundation is to automate everything that's flowing into CRM. We all have call recorders now. Capture that primary information and send it in. Capture the email and send it in. And then use the AI to make the associations. We call it a revenue graph between the inbound data that's coming from unstructured sources and the structured data that lives in CRMs and other systems. So that's absolutely where I would recommend a jumping off point.
Yeah, we found at Sales Rows that the data has been the biggest win so far for AI. One of the things, I mean, and it's a big part of our business because it's cold calling, it's go to market, is actually pulling the data and using AI to be better targeted. You know, you can pull things from Zoom Info. We all know they're not always so accurate from an industry perspective, a title perspective. And before either that data would, those leads would come down to the SDR, they would have to look it up, make sure the person's there, make sure the title's there, is correct, make the call to find out. Now we run an AI agent on every list, both for account list to make sure it's the right targets and the contact list to make sure that it is the right context that we're calling. And that's been a great AI use case for us.
That's a perfect example. And that actually gets into the second tranche that I talked about, which is changing the productivity of the rep. Historically, we've asked reps to do a lot of things, including monitoring accounts, keeping a finger on the pulse, putting together a campaign, whether that's through the BDR function or directly through the rep. That all is time consuming. And in the grand scheme of things, not a highly productive use of the rep's time. When you've got an agent sitting on top of every account, monitoring triggers and signals, they can proactively notify the rep as soon as there's something interesting that's happening in the account. And even beyond that, they can take a crack at building an appropriate set of messages that are going to engage that particular account. Once you couple that kind of an AI agent with the rep, suddenly the rep's time shifts to executing and closing. They can do more of that simultaneously and monitor more accounts simultaneously. And that's where the real productivity of stages two comes from.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of things you described are definitely things that we wanted a lot of our sales team to do, but they either wouldn't do it, but also they didn't have enough time to do it. And so the whole concept of folks being replaced by AI, at least what I'm finding, at least in these early stages, I'm curious your perspective, is that the AI is replacing a lot of things we just didn't have the time to do. It was too expensive to do. Like, we wouldn't look at 5,000 websites before we put them into a lead list. Now we can. And so it's replacing a job that wasn't even there before, because the marginal cost of doing these actions that we would have loved to have done before is just so low.
I've got an analogy that I like to use in response to this question. I'm a woodworker, and a lot of the work that I do with power tools. I could absolutely do them with hand tools, but with power tools, I'm able to do a lot more work. When power tools came on the scene, you didn't take a mediocre or poor woodworker and suddenly transform them into a world-class craftsman. They simply did what they did at larger scale, which was produce mediocre furniture. The reality is, and we need to call a spade, there are a lot of people in sales right now that are okay. They're not great. But when you give them tools, they're going to become okay at scale. I believe that what's going to happen is you're going to be able to take these outstanding salespeople, give them these tools, and suddenly allow them to cover much more surface area and do incredible work at a much larger scale. Implications for companies: sales teams probably will be smaller tomorrow than they are today. Margins will improve as a result of that. Job satisfaction will go up because you're allowing these excellent sellers to do what they love. And the people that aren't great at this job, well, the good news is they're great at something, and AI is going to make that amplify that capability and probably help them to find that job even faster. So I do think there's going to be some redistribution, but ultimately good news for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that brings up a question I have, is that in the AI world, are there certain fundamental skills or types of salespeople that are better suited in the AI world? And is that different than what they were previously? Or is it kind of to your analogy that they are superstar salespeople? Those superstar salespeople are great at, can adopt this technology to amplify their skills? Or is it a little bit of a different thing, or a hybrid of both?
Yeah, I've having spent several decades in sales, come to recognize that there are different kinds of sellers. There is the seller that has an innate instinct to close. And it's almost like a running back in football. They just know they got to find the hole, and you don't necessarily have to map it out for them on the whiteboard. They're just wired to know, find the hole, find the hole, find the hole, and whatever happens, however the line is scrambled, they find the hole. Salespeople are like that. Great salespeople. They know how to find the lane that gets them to a closed won deal. Now you give them tools and you train them to help accelerate the process of them learning. But at the end of the day, they're kind of natively wired to that. You've got another group of salespeople that are, I would say, and maybe this is a little pejorative, but more paint by numbers. Okay, here's your sales process, go from A to B to C to D. They're very diligent. They do that. But at the end of the day, they're never quite crossing the chasm and making the things happen that these great sellers are. So in an AI enabled world, what you're going to have two groups. One group is going to find the hole and they're going to simply use AI as a thought partner. They're going to spar with that AI. They're going to push back at it. They're going to tell it it's wrong. They're going to want the AI to push back on them. And ultimately, what they're doing is they're refining an instinct that they already brought to the conversation. The other group is letting the AI do the homework for them. Hey, what should I do here? How should I approach it? Unfortunately, there's just not a place for those people. That's not how AI is going to allow you to get ahead. And the litmus test I always use for myself is, am I in the driver's seat of this AI conversation? Am I kicking the AI's butt right now? Or am I just a passenger asking for the instructions and then passing that along to the next person? You never want to be in the second bucket. You want to be in the first. That's true for sales. It's true for leadership. It's going to be true across the board.
I think we've seen a lot of the technologies in the past that make salespeople paint by number or just sort of press a button and they're there to press a button. A lot of the sales cadence tools turned into that, right? Where we hired all these folks coming out of college who had these degrees and gave them outreach and sales loft. And basically they're just sitting there pressing a button to allow the cadences to do the work for them. And we know that that didn't end well and that created a much worse salesperson and a sales experience for the buyers. And I think AI runs that risk to some degree in the way that you describe, where all of a sudden people can sort of be paint by, there's probably even worse ways to say it. I'll stick with paint by numbers. So where they just sort of click a button, they get the response for the email, they take their call notes from their discovery call, put it in ChatGPT, writes the next email, and they could get through the pipeline and they could potentially not even know what the prospect is about, any of the pain points, because they're just kind of going through the motions and they're not processing the information. And I think one of the big risks, and I see it for myself, and I think the way that you framed it is good, is you need to be in the driver's seat, is you can let the AI think for you, and then all of a sudden, it's a much worse outcome. But if you can really leverage the AI, spar with it, really make sure you're processing the information that are, in your discovery call, thinking through things, strategizing, it can amplify. And so it can have two very different effects on the sales world.
And to that end, I'll share with you a bit of a kind of a hack I've stumbled upon as I'm interviewing and hiring reps in particular. I'll ask them, share your screen, and I want to see the thread that you use to prepare for this set of interviews. All right, if they don't have a thread, automatic DQ, because at this stage, you cannot move fast enough if you don't have an AI companion by your side. But it's very telling for me to go through and look at the kinds of prompts that they're putting in. If the prompts are, hey, what should I say in the interview? Great. Can you make a list of that and put it into bullets that I can print out? That's bad as well. Yeah. On the other hand, if they're like, hey, I've got this idea about this company, but I'm not sure about this. What are your thoughts on it? Actually, I disagree with that. How do you feel about this? And there's a real active dialogue happening where you can tell the person's leaning in, they're probing their thinking, they're testing things. They literally are asking the AI to challenge them and they're challenging back. That's the kind of rep that you want working for you and the demonstration that they know how to use the AI.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great hack. We might have to steal that from you there, Justin.
So the other comment on that, I think that, that's possible when you're going cold into an interview. When you want to have that kind of a thought partnership with the AI, once you're inside of a company, let's say that you're working on a deal or you're trying to expand an account, The nature of the technology required to have that discussion is very different. I mentioned before the revenue graph. This revenue graph essentially maps all of the data points related to an account or a deal. It connects them in a logical way, and it's able to extract context from that. As a result of that, you can get into a real conversation. In fact, earlier today, I was having a conversation about a customer with our implementation against Claude, and we were going at it back and forth. But because Claude was plugged into our revenue graph, it had full understanding of all the things that had happened with this account. And it could go beyond simply retrieving data. It could actually start to reason and evaluate the ideas I was coming up with and expand on those ideas.
Yeah, I think that it is so easy to take the easy route with this, and we all want it, right? We all, all want to have less work and whatnot, and it's very enticing. But I think people really have to stay relevant today, fight that, and potentially, like what you're saying, is really not even want to go there, right? To be so curious and to realize that this is a machine that can allow you to uncover so many things with a click of the button, instead of just sort of giving you the answers for the test. And so I'd love to zoom out a little bit, actually. So we're talking a little bit about some of the skills and the types of folks from a skill set perspective that aren't suited as well for the AI world. I'm curious your thoughts, and I heard this in one of your podcasts, the AI replacement test, and curious how you look at actual roles and how they're vulnerable to AI.
Well, I will start by throwing a role out there from the beginning. That's the SDR role. I think the SDR role is has a short runway at this point, and that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a role that was built fundamentally to address the needs of the company and not the audience that it's targeting. It's based on interruption, and it's based on generic hooks that hopefully through volume will intrigue enough people to justify the existence of the SDR. It's also a combination of a couple of different responsibilities. One, researching an account, and then two, the actual mechanics of the outreach. We're now in a world where the agents can do all of the account research. So that goes away, and you should not have a human doing that. In terms of this high volume outreach that we've come to know over the past 10 years, people have started to shut down. Nobody answers their phones anymore. Nobody responds to email. There's no point in having any kind of outreach that's kind of generic, traditionally associated with the SDR. In the future, the reps will be able to have a targeted enough list of accounts that they know are engaged to be able to have a highly personalized exchange, either directly with them or through a connection, which, by the way, the agents will be able to figure out as well. So we move from a world where you've got an SDR that's got kind of this, conglomeration of responsibilities that they kind of do okay, to a world where the agents are specializing in their thing and the reps are specializing more in the relationship orientation of it.
In that world, you're saying the AEs are doing their own prospecting using agents to help augment what they do.
Yeah, and I'd say the agents are getting them 80% of the way down the path, whereas today, automations get us 15% of the way there. So it's going to be a very different world.
And do you see anything else? Because in throughout time, salespeople have always needed more and more leads, and the leads were insatiable, right? With the number of leads you have. And so do you see in the world of AI any transition in the generation of leads? Is it really just that, AI, the AEs are self-generating, or do you see any other openings that are opening up through agentic AI that will reform the lead generation landscape?
Well, I think there's two components to that question. One is how are we able to generate more leads? And then the other is the mechanisms that we'll use to do that. To your first question, I actually think there will be a material shift from quantity to quality. And we've talked about this in the past, but one of the reasons that there is an insatiable appetite today for leads is because most of the leads are low quality. And so we've just come to accept the fact that we need a lot of leads, because if only 1% of those hit, then if I'm going to hit my number, you got to multiply that by 100. So if you're converting 50, 60, 70% of the leads, suddenly you need far fewer leads in order to get it done. So I think that's the first mind shift I would make. In terms of the mechanisms to generate leads, I actually think that people are very skeptical. They're very educated buyers today. Anything produced by a company, whether it's marketing collateral, whether it is a website with messaging and positioning, immediately discounted. The new access points are credentialized individuals that you trust talking about things that you care about. We have known about relationship selling for a long time. I think we have yet to crack the code in terms of how to scale that.
Mm.
But when companies truly discover value in an AI world, they're going to be able to harness their advocates and their evangelists in order to be able to share that news in an appropriate way at an appropriate time at a level that we haven't seen before. LinkedIn's kind of started to unlock this a little bit, but not really. You've seen other platforms where influencers are present, forums. I really think that's the way forward, though.
No, that's interesting, and referral sales are obviously the absolute gold, and the other thing that we're seeing obviously already, and we see it at Sales Roads, is the quality of some of the inbound leads, especially through the LLMs, are that much better because they're having conversations. They're really able to vet. It's not just a little blue link that's coming up and you click on five, you call, but you can figure out exactly the type of company that you're looking for. You can talk about some of the background, and you can actually have a conversation with the LLM versus just a search engine, which was a very different experience just a few years ago, or really just a few months ago in some ways.
The other point, and you kind of touched upon this, sales has historically complained about the quality of the leads. It's the ongoing war between marketing and sales. Marketing, I gave you the leads. Sales, the leads were no good. We're back to the ABC always be closing days and the Alec Baldwin speech. We now know if the leads are good. The reason is not only can AI help to surface the opportunities, it's, as I said, a thought partner with the rep during the deal. And if the rep gets to the end of the deal and says, "Oh, I lost the deal because clearly it was unqualified or it just wasn't high quality," the agent can actually say, "David, here are three places where you kind of went awry. And based on the quality of the deal, you should have been able to close it." Now, even better if you can get that information in advance so that you can course correct. But again, having that thought partner with you all the time eliminates the excuses,
Yeah.
the complaining about the quality, the things that are outside of your control, and puts the focus squarely on the rep and what they can accomplish.
And going back to your earlier point about behavior transformation, I think that's such a powerful thing that now you can get real-time coaching as you go along if you ask for it, if you listen to it. And so what have you seen from your clients as far as the reps adopting these types of self-coaching tools? Because one of the things with a lot of sales reps is they feel like they don't need coaching. They don't want to, do role play, things like that. How open are they to the AI coaching tools? Are they more open to it because it's now sort of in their control? It's not another person coming and telling them what they did right or wrong, and maybe there's a little less ego involved? Or are they using it less because it's, they don't have to, and it's not another person saying, okay, here's what you need to do?
I think that actually one of the reasons that a lot of these tools have been poorly adopted isn't because of the rep themselves. The fault kind of lies at the feet of the RevOps team, the leadership team that's done a poor job of rolling them out. And what I mean by that is rather than saying, here's what you're going to get out of this, let me show you why you're going to be able to ultimately hit your quota or exceed your quota with these tools, it turns into more of a, here's what we require of you. Here are the boxes that you need to check. I'll give you a great example of kind of how we were able to deploy tools within our own company. And there was actually very little around process reinforcement, et cetera. We have deal reviews. It started with me and working with my head of sales. And we had conversations. And my head of sales is realizing, hey, there's some questions coming at me, and I hadn't anticipated these before. And so after one particular meeting, I called the timeout and I said, how are you feeling right now? And they said, well, you're asking some tough questions. And I said, let's actually talk about how you could have used um, our implementation of AI hooked into our revenue graph to prepare for these kinds of questions. And we walked through one scenario where we used AI as the thought partner. Everything changed after that. I didn't need to say, okay, before the next meeting, do this. Make sure that you follow these steps. Once they get it, they realize that if they're in the hot seat and they're able to deliver on command, that's all they need. Same thing with a deal. Hey, that deal you really struggled in. Let's roll back the clock. And if you would have used the tool more effectively, what would that have looked like? And you walk through one scenario and suddenly, they understand the magic of it themselves.
And so it sounds like when people are implementing it in the right way, that the adoption is good. And so, what percentage would you say of sales teams are actually implementing these things in the right way, or is it more than half, less than half? Like, where are we as a sales or industry in being able to implement these tools right?
I think we're early days. Obviously, everyone's quoting the MIT study about 95% of AI projects failing. I think one of the challenges that we've got is that we're bringing a SaaS mindset to an AI world. And the reality is that most of the SaaS tools that we gave to salespeople actually were not built to benefit salespeople. They were built to benefit managers and RevOps people that needed to complete certain tasks or get certain information, but that was all at the cost of the rep's time and attention. And so we got used to this idea reps aren't going to benefit from this anyway, so we have to use a stick and we have to be prescriptive and we have to lay out the processes and put them through training. And that's the mindset we brought to AI. Good news is this stuff legitimately works and it makes reps better and it helps them reach better outcomes. We no longer have to use the stick. This is an incredible carrot. And as you shift the mindset back to the carrot mentality and back it up with a tool that actually delivers, everything changes. So I think that the failure rate is higher than we would want. I don't have a number off the top of my head, but certainly well above 50% at this point. I think again, though, it's because of the flawed approach we're taking to implementing it rather than the inherent problems with the tools themselves.
Yeah, and they're so new. It takes a different type of mindset. It takes figuring out who are the right people to hire, like you started at the beginning of this conversation. So, and potentially having different leaders who are leading the charge for AI. And so, with that, and I know we're coming up then here, but I'd love for you to take sort of a big picture mindset. You've touched on some of the things here, but if we were to fast forward 3 to 5 years,
Yeah.
what is your take on what a high performing sales organization looks like compared to what it looks like today?
There's a concept that I'm really excited about called closed loop revenue. And closed loop revenue brings together three different facets of revenue management, which I would argue today are highly disconnected: deal execution, forecasting, and high level strategic decision making. Right now, your deal execution is in a CRM system. Forecasting is probably in a separate standalone system or spreadsheets. And your decision making is really driven out of dashboards. And all of those, to keep them connected, if they are connected, requires a lot of manual data jockeying, massaging, and individual interpretation. 3 to 5 years from now, this will be a closed loop, meaning the AI is going to be your thought partner that's helping you to close the deal and constantly monitoring all the signal associated with that deal. That gets aggregated up and drives the forecast. So you now get not only a clear understanding of where you're going to land the quarter, but a highly explainable understanding of everything that sits underneath that. And once you've got that level of visibility, that then feeds into your decision-making mechanisms, surfacing trends, what's on the rise, what's falling, where do I need to move resources, and where can I pull it from? Um, and as you better execute the decisions that you're making, that starts to promote deal execution again. So you've got this beautiful flywheel now. Everything's connected, and the AI is the connective tissue that keeps it all working together. Earlier on, I talked about the three tranches of how you use AI, and the last was the tranche around changing the economics of the business. It's the closed loop revenue that changes the economics. You have fewer resources now driving the process, covering more surface area, you're able to more proactively pursue decisions and opportunities, which in turn drives margin expansion. That's where the really exciting moment starts to happen.
We will leave it there. But before I let you go here, what we usually like to do with our guests is do a section called rapid fire questions. And so I'm going to throw a few questions at you and would love to get your perspective on each one.
All right, let it rip.
All right. So what is one thing people don't give enough value or attention to in leadership?
Asking the fourth and fifth level questions. Most leaders are good at asking the first question, maybe the second question. The best leaders I've worked for get to the point where they're asking the question that I stopped asking.
I love that. I haven't gotten that one before. What is one skill you advise everyone in sales to master?
Maniacally map out the plan before you execute the plan. It will never go based on the way that you've mapped it out. But if you're rigorous, you're going to see all the corner cases and never be caught flat-footed.
Favorite business leadership or sales book?
I love a book. It came out 20 years ago called First Break All the Rules. It was a Gallup book on great leadership. And I can summarize it in one sentence. Don't try to change people. Just hire the right people in the first place.
Favorite quote, mantra, or saying that inspires you as a sales leader?
That's got to be Patrick Swayze. Nobody puts baby in a corner.
Throwing a little dirty dancing in. All right. What is the most important goal or project you're working on right now?
Most important project I'm working on right now is doing a planche push-up. You put your hands on the ground and then you get your feet totally off the ground, so there's no other body part.
Wow.
And then you do a push-up. It's an insanely hard maneuver, and I'm nowhere close to doing it, but we're in January, right? I got 12 months.
All right. That sounds not only hard, but also, you've got to have some good balance there to do that. So that's awesome, Justin. Well, thank you so much for joining here today on Sell Like a Leader podcast. Love your perspective on AI, where it's going. You guys are in the middle of it and helping to allow sales leaders to actually get real benefit, economic benefit out of AI. And so before we go, can you also just give us a little sense of Terret, and also if people want to learn more about it, how they can check it out?
Terret delivers that closed loop revenue system that I described. We couple together AI-driven deal execution with AI-driven machine forecasting and decision-making. You can check us out at terret.ai, and there you'll find some really interesting case studies about companies that are using us at scale, thousands of customers or users, to increase their sales productivity, shorten their sales cycles, and ultimately improve the margins that they're driving to deliver revenue.
Thank you, Justin. Amazing stuff you guys are building over there. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe on your platform of choice. And you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. Love to hear from you guys. Any questions you guys have, guests you want to have on the show. Until the next episode, thanks so much. Thanks again, Justin.
Bye.